Simon, Hytale's owner, hung out and streamed for a couple of hours the other day, and we had a discussion about building. Specifically, he isn't happy with its current state and is specifically worried about the systems that support building, crafting, inventory management, and storage. During this discussion, we identified many problems with building that largely affect these block-based games, but are also Hytale specific. So after about 10 hours refining my ideas with Stream, I have what I believe to be the best solution to fit Hytale's problem. In this video, I have everything from new tools, a blueprint system, a new processing bench, reorganization of benches, and more. Feel free to drop comments down below at any point to let me know what you think. First, I want to lay out the problem in a bit more detail because if you don't fully understand the problems, it might be a bit harder to understand why these solutions were chosen. Think about these problems in the context of you working on a build in Hytale. First, the main problem Simon posed to me in stream, the storage and inventory problem. I'm not sure how many base blocks exist in the game right now, but it's already a lot in exploration mode. There are like 30 different wood types alone, and then not everything is even in exploration mode yet. A lot exists in creative that isn't generated in the world yet, and more will likely be added throughout early access. On top of that, the Hytale team has plans for more worlds and dimensions, and each one of those could double the number of blocks every time they add a new world or dimension in. So 5 years from now, we may be talking about 500 different base blocks. And then when you consider each block might have up to 3 or 4 variants for itself, and most blocks have at least a stair and slab version, many of them having roofs, walls, fences, furniture options, and a lot more, we will likely have thousands of different blocks, many thousands, to manage inside of our inventory and store and sort inside of our chests. On top of this, think about the average building experience that you have. You fill your inventory with several versions of a block, a few style variants, stairs, slabs, roofs, etc. Then you do that for a couple of different block types and you're out of inventory space. You have to shuffle these blocks in and out of your hotbar to place them. You have to travel back and forth to your storage area to swap out blocks. And you have to swap out blocks in your build to figure out what looks good. And by the end of it all, you've spent more time inside your inventory screen, chest screens, and walking back and forth than you did building. This isn't even mentioning the likely dozens of extra unused items that you've crafted that you now have to sort and find room for and spend a lot of time in your storage area just putting those away. Multiply this over months and years of building, and you can see all the problems that building presents for the average player's gameplay loop. So, solving these problems will require a list of solutions that are all intertwined with each other. It needs to be easy for players to grasp, as most players don't look up tutorials or guides and just figure out things on their own. It needs to keep you immersed in the game. You shouldn't feel like you're in creative mode. You shouldn't need to spend a lot of time navigating menus, and it should fit the lore and the theme of the game. An example of this is a tool that is currently in the game, the hammer. It's easy to understand. It swaps between block types. It's immersive. You smack a block with it and it cycles between those block types for you and gives an in-game feedback with the audio cue and the visual change. Also, we don't want to replace the current systems for crafting with the builder's workbench and the furniture workbench, but I will touch on reorganizing a few things inside of them so they make more sense. Like currently, the furniture that you make from blocks doesn't even exist in the furniture workbench, it's in the builder's workbench. With this in mind, these solutions can be a part of game progression as to not overwhelm players with too much too quickly. Players can use the current and familiar ways of crafting and building in the early game, get familiar with these core parts of the game, then get introduced to these improved tools as they progress. Some players may not like these solutions. It's impossible to please everybody and get everybody to agree on something. But people that don't like this slightly more advanced system can also continue to use what the game gives them currently to use. So, moving into the solutions, the first solution is a tool belt. This tool belt I picture as just being a part of your character's UI, not a physical item that you find and equip, kind of like the offhand slot. It could even work like the backpack does today, where you get the tool belt upgrade from the builder's workbench. This tool belt for now would have 3 slots and would have some sort of on-screen display to show which slot is active. And it would need some keybind to scroll through it, sort of how your offhand slot works now. An alternative to this system could be that these tools could just go into your offhand slot if adding a tool belt or additional keybinds isn't preferred by the Hytale team. Now, for what goes in this tool belt, first would be the existing hammer that we have in the game right now. The hammer would be moved to be available in tier 2 of the builder's workbench and be a mid-game targeted item, likely requiring materials found outside of zone 1 to obtain. The current functionality would largely stay the same. You can hit a block with the hammer if you want to cycle through its available variants. Or you can hold down the Q button to visually see them and select it. Unlike the current implementation though, instead of pulling up a radial, I would suggest it would pull up a cascading drop menu above the tool belt or offhand slot to show you the available variants of that block, which you could scroll through and select. I'll note that the drop radial will only show 3 options, and then we'll have an arrow above if more options exist to cycle between, so the screen doesn't get cluttered with too many options displayed at once, or the current implementation of having this big radial fill the screen, which kind of takes away that immersion and pulls you out of the game. It would do this for the block that you have in your hand, and just like it works today, it would change the block to that block style. So in short, the functionality of the hammer is the same as it is today. We're just putting it in the tool belt and changing the UI to this much less intrusive drop menu instead of the radial. Again, mostly because it keeps you immersed in the game and feeling less like you're menu surfing, even though you're technically still doing the same action. Next, we're going to use the idea of how the hammer works and apply it to a new tool, the chisel. I wanted to keep these systems working in the same way because it will be more intuitive to the player for these to mostly function the same. Where the chisel differs though is instead of cycling through block type like the hammer, it cycles through block shape. It's going to do this a little differently though. The hammer actually changes the block in your inventory to the block type that you choose. As displayed here, right now I'm holding 97 stone bricks. I can change that to 97 smooth stone bricks. This is how it works in vanilla Hytale currently. So with the chisel selected in your tool belt and the block you want to chisel selected in your hotbar, when you hold Q and pull up the selections for block shape, you'll have the option of picking full block, stair, slab, post, and then the 4 different roof types. Of course, if the block you have selected doesn't have some of these options available, maybe it's a block that doesn't have roof types available to it, they just wouldn't appear in the list. Although I would say, especially for stairs, slabs, and maybe the post too, almost every single block in the game should have these options available, with a few exceptions that might make sense to do so. The UI would need to indicate in some way which shape you have selected so players can easily tell. Something like the example I have on screen right now would work. And also your block preview, if you have it turned on, would show the shape that is being placed. But your in-inventory block, which shows up in your hotbar, would still show that base block. It doesn't change it to a stair, slab, or whatever like the hammer does. And then once the stair, slab, or other block is actually placed down, at that point is when it becomes the shape that you chose. And if you break it at that point, that's the shape, that's the block that you get back. So these two tools are made to easily work in conjunction with each other. As an example, you have cobblestone selected in your inventory. With your hammer equipped in your tool belt, you hold the Q button down and select stone bricks. Now the block in your inventory is stone bricks. You change to your chisel, hold the Q button again, and now you select stairs as your block shape. With the stone bricks in your hand, your block preview shows stone brick stairs, and you place down stone brick stairs. If you break these stairs, they will then be in that stair block form and go into your inventory that way. I have a solution for this a little bit later. What this is replacing for us is the need to carry the stairs, the slabs, the roof blocks, and these different block variants in your inventory at a time. So that one inventory slot, the stone brick slot, might actually now prevent you from having to put 6, 8, 10 different options of blocks in your inventory as well, which takes up all of your inventory space. This also means you don't have to hit the tab button to pull up your inventory as often to swap blocks in and out of your hotbar, and it will allow you to then carry more different block types in your inventory, which means less traveling back and forth to your chest. Yes, you spend a little bit of time navigating menus, but that time is very limited in comparison to those examples that I just gave. Next, though, what about furniture? Furniture is a bit more tricky because there are more options for furniture, and there are many options Simon says are not in the game yet that will likely be added to the furniture options in the future. So if this is the case, we don't want players to have to scroll through a list of 15 or 20 different furniture options in a little bar on the bottom of your, like beside your hotbar. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense. It wouldn't make for a good experience. It would actually be quite hard and annoying to do. This is where I believe we need to actually use some sort of menu, but we're going to do so in a way that masks itself as being more in-game and a gameplay based solution. So it doesn't just feel like a menu. So that being said, your next tool is going to be the blueprints. When you have your blueprints tool out and you hold your Q button or whatever button that it's going to be for 1 or maybe 2 seconds, your player will actually hold the blueprint out in front of their face. And rather than just having an on-screen UI show your furniture options, I think it would be cool to use a little bit of magic here. Think like the Harry Potter movies, where your furniture options and text magically appear and maybe can even move around and be interactive a bit. I'm not really an artist, so I have no good way to display this to you, but I hope you get the idea. So with the box selected in your hotbar and using your blueprints, what would appear on screen would be all the furniture options available for that specific block. You would click or select the furniture option you want. The blueprint would then get put away or put down. And with the block still in your hand, you would get a block preview to show that piece of furniture to be placed down. For example, you had a piece of wood in your hand, you went through the menu, you selected a table. When you put the blueprint away, you still have a block in your hand because you haven't changed it into a table yet, but the block preview that appears on the ground is that of a table. And in here, you would have a game setting that would either have that furniture just be placed. So when you click the button to place the table, it just places the table and it deducts the material costs out of your stack of inventory. It would take the 1 block away or however many blocks the furniture costs to make. Or adversely, and maybe better, I think, you could have a setting that makes it so the furniture doesn't instantly place. Instead, when you click the left mouse button to place that block preview, it actually just places that ghost image of the block preview on the ground, and then you could place multiple. So you could place a ghost image of a table, of a few chairs, and maybe of a few shelves sitting down to see if you like the way that this looks before you go and confirm those options and actually spend the materials. You just have to press the use button. I think it's F by default. I have it changed to E for myself, but you press your use button and then that would confirm the furniture piece individually and then would deduct the material cost from your inventory to place it. This allows you to test and try things out, to move around and take a look at things without actually making a whole bunch of furniture first, placing it around and maybe finding that you don't like certain pieces or you don't want to use certain pieces. We could also tie this into the magic in the game as well, where some games may put like a blueprint outline of the item on the ground. This could be some type of magical looking representation of the item. If that fits into the game lore and makes it feel like a more in-game action better, rather than making it feel like you're in creative mode. But the idea here would be to make it a little bit easier to figure out your furniture layout. And if you want things before you actually place them, there could be a restriction here in terms of the number of previews you can place down or how far you can walk away from them before they disappear, or maybe they just disappear when you relog. There would be solutions to this, so it has some level of restriction to it. And again, takes it a little bit away from feeling like you're just in creative mode planning things out. So far, we have introduced 3 new tools, all of which only have 1 menu layer that keep the game immersion and fit the theming and lore of Hytale. They work independently of each other, but between a hammer and chisel can also be made to work together. But now we have another problem to solve for. Whenever you build something, even in this system, which should be more efficient, you're going to have leftover blocks and furniture from changing your decision on things, for experimenting with how things look, etc. So we still have inventory and storage clutter that is going to pile up over time. This is where we introduce something that I came up with and somebody in my stream chat came up with a great name for, which is the Reclaimer. The Reclaimer is a magical processing station functional in a way that's similar to the furnace or the salvager. In this case, you put crafted blocks and furniture into it, and it will convert those at either a ratio that includes a little bit of a loss or a 1-for-1 ratio back into their base blocks. If we want there to be a little bit of material loss, my suggestion would be a simple material point-based system. It doesn't even have to be something that's player-facing that the player has to interact with. It could just happen in the background. As an example, a full block could require 6 material points to make. A slab could be 2 material points. A stair would be 4 material points. A post could be 2 material points. So in this example, you could have a stair block put in and a slab block put in, Those combined equal 6 material points, and the output would be the block in which they were made from. Obviously, it would have to be the same material, so it would be like a stone brick stair and a stone brick slab would give back a stone brick. You wouldn't be able to mix and match a wood with a stone to get some type of block out because those don't go together. So as the reclaimer is processing these partial blocks, every time it gets to 6 points for a material, it would output that material's full block. It would have to remember these material values though. Otherwise, if you don't get up to the full 6 points, you would have some unintended loss that would occur. And I'm not sure how that would work programming wise for the Hytale team, but if for some reason it couldn't be managed or it can't work, the simple solution would just be a 1-for-1. When you input a block, you get the exact cost back in block form. You put in a stair, you get that original block back. You put in 2 slabs, you get that original block back. You put in a piece of furniture, you get in that original block back. Basically, it would be like a reverse crafting. I do imagine at least this would be very easily possible to do right now. Since our reclaimer is magic and how it works, it also needs to be magically powered. In this case, the crystals we find in the world will be its power source or its fuel. Crystals are not easily renewable currently though, so while if you know where to look, you can get a decent amount of them, eventually it may become quite hard to continue fueling your reclaimer, so I didn't want to present a problem here without a solution, so here's what I came up with. Budding crystal blocks. These blocks would be crafted at the Arcanist workbench, which will need to be upgraded to tier 2 to be able to craft these blocks. When you craft a crystal block, a normal crystal block out of the crystal fragments, you take it to the Arcanist bench and combine together with maybe an essence and maybe something like a gold or silver ingot. These are all magically related items in the Hytale world that would create your budding crystal block. This block could then be placed anywhere in your world, and slowly over time, it would grow crystals on any or all of its 6 sides. Through this implementation, it would give crystals value and would make them renewable, but as a late game method of doing so. It would also add value to essences and to gold or silver, making them more important to gather in your world as well. Lastly, Simon wants to reorganize the current builders and furniture workbenches a bit. He admitted they were thrown together last second to give players a way to get these items, and I actually have some minor changes that I would make to them that I think would make perfect sense. First, the furniture workbench has 3 tabs that aren't related to furniture in any way, really. The pottery, textiles, and wooden walls tabs are all blocks and should go in the builder's workbench since they are all block form items. The current main and only page of the builder's workbench right now would then become the default tab, and then these 3 additional tabs would be added across the top. Next, the builder workbench is where you currently build furniture, not the furniture workbench, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Also, though, there's a lot of furniture options. Let's say eventually all 30-ish wood types have 15 furniture options. That's 450 furniture options alone. Then you'll have many stone options and maybe more new furnitures added in the future, which could be hard to navigate through if you just threw that all in a menu where you have to click around. So what I would probably do is when you add the furniture tab to the furniture workbench, we'll use some of the builder's workbench UI functionality here. On the left-hand side would be a list of available to use materials from either the player's inventory or connected chests that you could cycle through to select. And then when you click on a material, the available furniture options would appear on the right-hand side. This would simplify adding the furniture you want to build without adding in nested menus to go through or a lot of additional clutter in this furniture UI. Now, there are some items that we haven't touched on here, things like lanterns, chests, beds, etc. For now, I think we leave these all as is and see what these proposed changes do to the process of building for players. And then we reassess and see if things need to be done with these other options when it comes to building, or if the system feels good with just these changes, with nothing else being needed. So to summarize, we built some progression into building, starting players out with the easy and familiar current method of using the benches to craft and build, and slowly introducing over time tools that will solve the current problems. The 3 tools will limit how much players have to run back and forth for materials, as they will only need to carry the base blocks on them for building. It will reduce inventory clutter and swapping things into your hotbar, because you won't have to deal with the interchanging different block styles and shapes from your inventory and hotbar. It'll reduce time spent having to empty out your inventory because you have too many things to carry. and will reduce time spent at storage having to find and craft all the block variants, then figure out where you want to store them when you're done. It does all of these things in a way that keep you immersed in the game and doesn't feel like you're just playing in creative mode. And I believe the end result will be players making bigger and better builds as they can focus more on the building process and experimenting with building rather than managing chess monsters created from all the pieces that get crafted and wasted. We also introduced some fun new mechanics like the blueprint system to lay out numerous furniture pieces at once before confirming, and a new processing station that has downstream effects of requiring crystals for use, meaning we need a renewable way to get those crystals, which require more existing items to make, adding in a lot more uses for several underused items in the game, and creating an entirely new farming category. Depending on the type of player you are, and if you're like me, you would probably build a reclaimer factory for processing these parts and a large crystal farm for every crystal type so you could make the blocks whenever you want and have the fuel available for your reclaimers. So let me know down in the comments below, what do you think about each feature individually and the system as a whole? I know people will have thousands of opinions and it's impossible to completely please everybody, but I hope everyone agrees that this system would be a net good to the game. And for those that don't care for it, they appreciate that the existing simple way of doing things now still exists for them to use. If you like this video, let me, YouTube, and the Hytale team know by clicking the like button. To get involved more in this process, subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Twitch at Prow8413 so you can be part of the planning, gameplay, and more in live streams, including having conversations with Simon and potentially other developers. And if you'd like to support my Hytale content, consider picking up a channel membership, recommending your friends and family use code Prow8413 when purchasing Hytale. Thanks for watching today. It's time for me to hightail it out of here, and I'll see you next time in Orbis. Goodbye.